There are places on this planet where human life should not be possible. Not abandoned ruins. Not ancient tourist attractions frozen in time. These are real villages where people still wake up every morning, raise families, work, and survive in conditions so extreme that most of us would struggle to last a single week. Some villages hang from cliffs where one wrong step means death. Some float on open water with no solid ground beneath them. Others sit beside active volcanoes where the air itself can burn your lungs. And yet people continue living there generation after generation. Not because they are trapped. Not because they have nowhere else to go. But because these impossible places are home. Today, we are counting down the 10 most impossible villages on Earth. Communities so extreme that even locals admit life there can be terrifying. Stay until the end, because number 1 is a volcanic mining village where workers climb into a crater filled with toxic gas every single night carrying loads of sulfur heavier than their own body weight. Before we begin, comment below and tell us where you are watching from and what time it is right now. Let's see how many countries this video reaches. Number 10. Hadza Territory, Tanzania. Near Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania lives one of the last true hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. Fewer than 1,300 Hadza people remain, and their lifestyle has barely changed for tens of thousands of years. There are no cities, no roads, no farms, no permanent houses, no money, no government leaders. The Hadza survive almost entirely through hunting and gathering, using handmade bows and arrows tipped with poison made from desert rose plants. The men hunt wild animals across the dry savanna while women gather berries, roots, and edible plants from the surrounding land. Honey is one of the most important foods in their diet. To get it, Hadza hunters climb trees over 10 meters high, often with no ropes or safety equipment, while thousands of aggressive African bees swarm around them. Researchers who studied the Hadza for years discovered something surprising. The average Hadza adult only spends about 3 to 4 hours per day gathering enough food to survive. Everything is shared equally among the group. Nobody owns wealth, land, or possessions beyond what they can carry. Their shelters are built from grass and branches in less than an hour. Then, after a few weeks, they abandon the camp and move somewhere else. What makes the Hadza extraordinary is that they are fully aware of the modern world, and they continue rejecting it. The Tanzanian government has repeatedly offered permanent housing, schools, and modern infrastructure. Most Hadza families refused. To them, freedom matters more than comfort. While the rest of the world measures success through technology and possessions, the Hadza measure it through independence. And by that definition, they may be among the freest people alive. Number 9. Asaro Mudmen Village, Papua New Guinea. Deep in the highlands of Papua New Guinea is a village where people deliberately transform themselves into monsters. The men of the Asaro tribe cover their bodies in pale river clay and paint dark lines across their skin so they resemble walking skeletons. Then they wear giant clay masks with hollow eyes, stretched jaws, and terrifying expressions frozen into place. In the cold morning fog of the highlands, they move slowly and silently through the mist, looking less like humans and more like spirits rising from the dead. According to tribal history, the tradition began centuries ago during a war between rival groups. A group of Asaro warriors hid in a muddy riverbank overnight while escaping enemies. When they emerged covered in pale clay at dusk, their enemies panicked and fled, believing they were ghosts. The warriors realized fear could be more powerful than weapons. And so the Mudmen tradition was born. Even today, the movements are designed to feel unnatural. The dancers move slowly, stiffly, and silently to create the feeling that something is deeply wrong. Although tourists now visit the region, the ceremonies still hold cultural importance for the local people. In a place surrounded by fog, jungle, and isolation, the Asaro discovered long ago that the most terrifying thing imaginable is a human being who no longer looks human. Number 8. Satan Reindeer Camps, Mongolia. In the frozen forests of northern Mongolia, near the Siberian border, lives one of the last remaining reindeer herding cultures on Earth. The Satan people survive in temperatures that regularly fall below -40 degrees Celsius. There are no roads, no electricity, no permanent villages, and for much of the year, no contact with the outside world. The Satan move constantly through the forests following their reindeer herds. Every few weeks they dismantle their teepee-like tents, load everything onto reindeer, and migrate across mountains and frozen wilderness. The reindeer are not simply animals to them. They are transportation, food, clothing, shelter, and survival itself. Children learn to ride reindeer before they learn to read. By age 5, many can already navigate dense forests alone. But this culture is slowly disappearing. The reindeer population has fallen dramatically over the past several decades, threatening the survival of the Saaten way of life. The Mongolian government has offered relocation programs and modern housing. Most Saaten families refused. To outsiders, life in the frozen wilderness seems brutally difficult. To the Saaten, leaving the forest would mean losing their identity. For them, the silence of the taiga is not isolation. It is home. Number 7. Tanah Toraja, Indonesia. In the mountains of South Sulawesi, Indonesia, there is a place where death is treated very differently from the rest of the world. When someone dies in Tanah Toraja, the body is often kept inside the family home for months or even years. The deceased person is cleaned, dressed, and placed in a special room where relatives continue speaking to them daily. Food is left beside the body. Family members sit with them. The dead are not considered truly gone. Instead, they are referred to as the sick person until the funeral ceremony finally takes place. And these funerals are massive events. Families spend years saving money because ceremonies can last an entire week and involve the sacrifice of dozens of water buffalo, costing far more than a family's annual income. Afterward, the dead are placed inside coffins carved into steep cliff faces high above the valley floor. Wooden statues called Tao Tao are positioned outside the tombs, staring silently across the landscape. But the strangest tradition happens during a ritual called Manin. Every few years, families remove the bodies of deceased relatives from their tombs, clean them, dress them in fresh clothes, and carry them through the village. In Tanah Toraja, death is not seen as an ending. It is an ongoing relationship between the living and the dead that continues across generations. Number 6. Bajau Sea Villages, Malaysia and the Philippines. Across the seas of Southeast Asia lives a community so connected to the ocean that their bodies have literally adapted to life underwater. The Bajau people, often called sea nomads, build entire villages on wooden stilts above the sea. Many settlements are far from land. Some Bajau families spend their entire lives on the water without ever owning land at all. Children learn to swim before they can walk. By the age of 8, many can already dive deep beneath the surface hunting fish with handmade spears. Adult Bajau divers regularly descend more than 60 meters underwater on a single breath, staying submerged for several minutes without equipment. Scientists studying the Bajau discovered something incredible. Their spleens are naturally much larger than those of nearby populations. The spleen stores oxygen-rich blood, and during deep dives it contracts, helping the body survive underwater longer. This means centuries of ocean living may have physically changed the Bajau people through evolution. Some divers even intentionally rupture their eardrums as children to reduce pressure pain during deep dives, a painful process that often causes permanent hearing damage. The sea shaped every part of Bajau life. And over generations, it shaped their bodies too. Number 5. Makoko, Nigeria. Less than 5 kilometers from the skyscrapers of Lagos, one of Africa's largest cities, lies a settlement built almost entirely above polluted water. Makoko is home to tens of thousands of people living in wooden houses balanced on stilts above a filthy lagoon. There are no roads, no cars, no organized sewage systems, no clean municipal water supply. Every movement happens by canoe. Children paddle boats to school. Parents paddle to work. Neighbors paddle to visit one another. The lagoon below the homes is heavily polluted with industrial waste and sewage. Flooding is constant. Disease spreads easily. And during heavy rains, water rises directly into homes. Despite the conditions, Makoko continues growing. Authorities have repeatedly tried demolishing parts of the settlement, displacing thousands of residents. But each time, people rebuild. New stilts are driven into the mud. New wooden homes appear above the water. Makoko survives because its people refuse to abandon it. In the middle of one of the fastest growing cities on Earth, an entire community continues living on a floating settlement with almost no infrastructure at all. Number 4. Ganvié, Benin. On Lake Nokoué in Benin sits one of the most unusual villages in Africa. Ganvié is a community of more than 20,000 people built entirely on water. Homes stand on wooden stilts above the lake. Schools float on platforms. Markets operate from boats. There are no streets because there is no land beneath the village. Ganvier was founded over 300 years ago for one reason: survival. At the time, slave raiders from a nearby kingdom regularly attacked villages across the region. But the local people discovered something important. Their enemies believed entering water was spiritually forbidden. So the villagers built their homes directly on the lake where the raiders would not follow. That decision saved entire communities from slavery. More than 3 centuries later, Ganvier still stands above the water exactly where its founders built it. Children learn to paddle canoes almost as soon as they can walk. Fishing remains the center of daily life. And every structure must constantly be repaired because the lake slowly rots the wooden stilts supporting the village. Ganvier began as a refuge. Over time, it became something much bigger, a permanent symbol of survival. Number 3. Korowai Treehouses, Indonesia. Deep inside the rainforests of Papua, Indonesia, lives a tribe that built its homes high above the jungle floor. The Korowai construct tree houses reaching 25 to 35 meters into the air. These are not simple platforms attached to trees. Entire homes are built directly into the forest canopy using living trunks and branches for support. The only way up is usually a single narrow pole carved with footholds. Families climb these poles multiple times every day carrying food, tools, water, and firewood. A fall from that height would almost certainly be fatal. The Korowai remained completely isolated from the outside world until the 1970s. At the time, many had no idea other civilizations even existed beyond the jungle. Their elevated homes serve several purposes. The height protects them from flooding during heavy rains. It reduces exposure to mosquitoes carrying disease. And it provides security from enemies because the access ladder can quickly be removed. Entire villages are relocated every few years when nearby food supplies become exhausted. Each new treehouse takes weeks to build using only natural materials gathered from the forest. No electricity, no roads, no written language, just survival high above one of the most dangerous jungles on Earth. Number 2. Magingo Island, Lake Victoria. In the middle of Lake Victoria sits one of the smallest and most overcrowded communities on the planet. Magingo Island is not really an island in the traditional sense. It is a tiny rocky outcrop with no soil, no trees, and no natural fresh water supply. And yet nearly 200 people live there. Hundreds of metal shacks are crammed tightly together across the rock, creating one of the highest population densities anywhere on Earth. Most residents survive through fishing. Every drop of drinking water must be transported by boat from the mainland, costing almost as much as many residents earn each day. There is no sewage system, no hospital, no school, but Magingo became internationally famous for another reason. Both Kenya and Uganda claim ownership of it. The waters surrounding the island contain extremely valuable fishing grounds, and for years both countries deployed police and security forces there. At one point, Kenyan and Ugandan flags flew only meters apart on the same tiny rock. Even today, the dispute remains unresolved. Yet despite overcrowding, political tension, and brutal living conditions, people continue arriving because the fish surrounding Magingo are worth the risk. For the residents, opportunity matters more than comfort. Number 1. Kawa Ijen Mining Villages, Indonesia. And finally, the most impossible village on Earth. On the island of Java, Indonesia, entire communities survive by mining sulfur inside an active volcanic crater. Every night before dawn, miners begin climbing toward the rim of Kawa Ijen volcano carrying empty baskets balanced across their shoulders. Most wear little more than rubber sandals and cloth masks wrapped around their faces. There are no oxygen tanks, no proper gas masks, no protective suits. From the crater rim, the miners descend hundreds of meters down steep volcanic paths into a toxic world filled with sulfur gas. At the bottom, scorching sulfuric fumes pour from cracks in the earth at temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Celsius. The gases condense into molten sulfur that cools into bright yellow rock. The miners break these chunks apart using metal bars and load them into baskets weighing up to 100 kilograms. Then comes the worst part. They climb all the way back out carrying nearly their own body weight through clouds of poisonous gas that burns their lungs, eyes, and skin. Many miners suffer severe respiratory disease and permanent damage to their teeth and eyesight after years of work. And yet they continue returning night after night because sulfur mining is often the only way to support their families. But Kawa Ijen contains something even more terrifying. At the bottom of the crater sits one of the world's largest acidic lakes, with water so acidic it can cause chemical burns on contact. And after dark, the volcano produces one of the strangest sights on Earth. The sulfuric gases ignite into glowing electric blue flames that flow down the crater walls like rivers of fire. The miners work surrounded by toxic smoke, blue flames, and darkness lit only by burning sulfur. For generations, villages around Kawa Ijen have depended on this deadly work. Fathers teach sons the route into the crater. The paths are memorized, not mapped. And every sunrise, exhausted miners emerge from the volcano carrying baskets of sulfur heavy enough to break most people. Only to return again the next night.